You can buy a piece of Wagyu steak, but you can't buy kindness." Marcia's words echoed softly, yet froze the entire room. Gregory Langston sat at the center table, expensive suit, face flushed with anger. He slammed his hand onto the table, rattling the silverware. "Someone like you shouldn't be serving here," he snarled, emphasizing each word. Marcia didn't lower her head. Her eyes were calm, unwavering. Around them, customers turned to look. Some frowned. Some covered their mouths. Some nodded slightly. The luxurious golden lighting cast a shadow over Marcia's face, isolating her from the entire room. No one spoke. No one laughed. In that silence, people realized this wasn't merely about a black woman and a rich man. It was something much bigger. "My name is Marcia Thompson. I'm 48, a single mother. I live in the Bronx." Every morning at 4:50, the alarm echoed in her small apartment. Marcia woke up, made coffee in the darkness, careful not to wake her daughter. She put on her coat and left before dawn. Cold wind slipped beneath her collar. Streets were quiet, only distant train lights flickered. "I don't know if today will be good or bad, but I know I must be at Monarch before 6. On the number 2 train, Marcia sat near the door, staring blankly through the window. She clutched an old leather bag, neatly folded uniform inside, along with a simple breakfast, a sandwich wrapped in paper. Every morning, I step outside, carrying both hope and worry. The train waits for no one. Neither does life. Marcia opened the door. Silence filled the apartment. Jasmine sat at the table, a bowl of instant noodles grown cold before her. She said nothing, just stirred the noodles. Her eyes were slightly swollen, red at the edges. Marcia sat down beside her daughter. "Something happened at school?" Jasmine stayed quiet, then softly said, "My friends said we're poor. My shoes are old. I don't have an iPad like them." Marcia glanced at the shoes on the floor. Worn heels, loose laces, faded color. The girl quietly wiped her tears and went back to eating as if she'd never spoken. Marcia's throat tightened. She wasn't sure if she should be angry or apologetic. All she knew was she'd done everything she could, yet somehow, it still wasn't enough. Marcia gently placed her hand on her daughter's shoulder. "Listen to me. No one has the right to make you ashamed of having a hard-working mother." Jasmine lowered her head, nodding slightly. No smile, but her eyes became less red. Marcia hugged her close. For a few seconds, neither spoke. Only the ticking clock and the noodles growing colder filled the silence. That night, after Jasmine fell asleep, Marcia took the small shoes from the corner. Needle, thread, glue, and a scrap of old leather. Each stitch was slow, careful. She repaired the worn heels, patched them up, cleaned the scratches. Hands calloused, eyes blurred with fatigue, yet she kept going. Old shoes didn't matter. All that mattered was her daughter walking into school tomorrow without shame. On the old wooden cabinet was a photo over 10 years old. Marcia, in a white ballet dress, arms spread wide, eyes closed, stage lights illuminating her face. She'd once been accepted into the city's art academy. Every evening after class, she practiced until her knees bled, but dreams ended abruptly. Pregnant at 18, her boyfriend vanished. Her parents, disappointed, said nothing. Marcia left school. From the stage to scrubbing floors, from spotlights to kitchen lights, washing dishes on night shifts. She never spoke about the past. She only kept her ballet shoes, hidden carefully in a wooden box under the bed. Have you ever given up something you loved for something more important? If this story touches you, subscribe to help Marcia's voice reach others. Only 2,000 more needed. The interview room was cold and excessively bright. Marcia sat straight, hands on her knees, trying to stay calm. The manager opposite, a white man in his 50s, glanced at her resume, then looked at Marcia. Her hair, shirt, worn shoes. "Have you served guests like ours before?" His voice wasn't loud, but it shrank the small room further. Marcia nodded slightly. "Yes, I worked at 2 upscale midtown restaurants. Evening shifts, weekends." He nodded quickly, flipping to another page. No further questions. Marcia left, feeling empty. No one explicitly called her unsuitable, but she knew she had something to prove that others didn't. The question remained, how long before they truly saw her as worthy? Marcia got the job. Evening shifts from 5 p.m. to late. Every day, fully booked. She started with small tasks, polishing glasses, folding napkins, pouring water. But when she got home, she didn't sleep immediately. On her table, Marcia spread out the menu, writing every dish into her notebook, repeating wine names, memorizing proper glass holding, correct bottle opening. Every night, after Jasmine slept, she stood before the mirror, holding a fake cork, practicing wine opening. Gentle, precise, silent. I thought if I was perfect, they'd have no reason to look down on me. But some things can't be fixed by effort, not measured by skills or speed. Marcia began to understand. This wasn't just a workplace. It was a daily test, reserved only for someone like her. At the end of a brief meeting, the manager glanced around and quickly announced, "Oh, from next week, Becky will take over as head server." Sparse applause followed. Becky smiled, unsurprised. Marcia stood quietly behind, still holding an unfinished tray of water. She said nothing. Didn't look at anyone. No one looked at her. Becky had been there 3 months. Marcia, 5 years. No mention, no explanation. She turned, walked into the kitchen. Steps slow, short, posture straight, but fists clenched tightly, nails marking her palms. No one asked how she felt. No one had to care. Only Marcia knew, today, effort alone wasn't enough. Maybe it would never be enough. In the changing room, soft laughter passed between 2 young servers. Becky tilted her head, locker door half closed, quietly remarking to the girl beside her, "Honestly, she doesn't fit Monarch's image." The other girl raised an eyebrow, said nothing, just smiled. Marcia stood just beyond the partition, pausing mid-fold of her napkin. No names spoken, no faces pointed out. Yet Marcia knew exactly who they were talking about. It wasn't the first time she'd heard it, only today. It came from the newly promoted person. Marcia folded the napkin, placed it in the basket. Didn't speak, didn't react. Silence. Sometimes not because you haven't heard, but because you've heard too much to know what else to say. Table 4. Mr. Montgomery was enjoying appetizers with 3 friends. His voice resonated, slightly drunk, yet forcefully authoritative. Marcia approached to pour wine, gently bowing. Just as she turned, red wine spilled, straight onto her ankle. Montgomery showed no surprise. He merely smirked, leaned back. "Clean it up. That's what you're good at." No laughter. No one intervened. Just sidelong glances, some avoiding eye contact, others pretending to be busy eating. Marcia knelt, white cloth in hand, dabbing the wet stain from her trousers. Slowly, silently. That moment felt endless. No music, no voices, no footsteps. Only her heartbeat and dignity crushed onto the cold floor. The bathroom door closed behind her. Outside, sounds vanished completely. Marcia leaned against the wall, her face tilted toward the ceiling. Her throat tightened, but she didn't scream. Tears streamed silently down her temples, following a familiar path. Her hand clenched the tissue, trembling. Not from cold, but from humiliation. She looked into the mirror. No makeup, hair frizzy, uniform still damp with wine stains at the bottom of her trousers. She saw a woman struggling to stand in a form no one wanted to look at. There are days. I wish I were invisible. So no one could see her, no words to hear, no more pushing herself until her soul tore apart. In that small room, there was only her breathing and water dripping from a broken faucet. No comforting words, no knock at the door. She was alone there, as always. The sound of crashing dishes rang from the kitchen. Julian slipped on the wet floor, dropping the tray, spraining his ankle. The manager entered, quickly scanning the scene, his voice decisive. "VIP table number 7, Gregory Langston. Who will replace Julian?" Everyone avoided eye contact. Becky glanced quickly at Marcia. Without waiting further, the manager pointed. "Marcia, you go." She raised her head, nodding slightly. No one spoke. She didn't ask questions either. Holding the tray, she quickly scanned the menu. 3 entrees, 2 wines, a man notorious for his demands and power, Gregory Langston, billionaire, Monarch chain's largest investor. Marcia stepped out of the kitchen. Her heart wasn't racing, but her spirits sank. She didn't know what tonight would bring. She only knew some evenings aren't just a shift. They're destiny. Marcia approached table 7 slowly. Gregory Langston sat cross-legged, swirling a glass of wine. He raised his eyes when he saw the uniform approach. His gaze paused on Marcia's face. A few seconds passed. No words, no raised eyebrows. Just a cold stare scanning her from head to toe. "You'll be serving me?" His voice deep, not loud, but clear. Enough for neighboring tables to hear, enough to create distance. Marcia gave a slight nod. "I'll be your server tonight, sir." A beat of silence. Gregory indifferently lifted his glass without replying. He simply turned away, as if someone had mistakenly placed the wrong order before him. Marcia stood tall, eyes fixed calmly on his hand resting on the napkin. Calm. No bowing, no stepping back. Gregory gently shook his glass, glancing sideways at Marcia as she prepared to uncork the bottle. "You sure you know how to pour wine?" His tone half mocking, half condescending. He didn't look her in the eye, just at the hand holding the bottle. Marcia didn't react immediately. She opened the cork with a neat motion, quietly, without making a sound. "Yes, sir. 5 years, not a single spilled drop." Her answer was succinct, not aggressive, but firm. Gregory paused for a brief second. No smile, no further comment. Marcia tilted the bottle, pouring just the right amount, not more, not less. She placed the bottle down, stepped back, eyes lowered slightly. No bending, no emotion. Her calmness wasn't submission. It was how someone experienced chooses to survive. Gregory twisted the glass in his hand, the red wine reflecting onto his collar. He leaned toward the man beside him, speaking quietly enough not to be overheard clearly, yet loud enough for Marcia, pouring water nearby, to catch every word. "Diversity policy is killing quality," he muttered, like a disappointed sigh. His companion simply chuckled, neither agreeing nor objecting, just nodding briefly to move past it. Marcia heard clearly. Not a word missed. Her hand paused slightly as she set the glass down, but her eyes remained unchanged. Nobody looked at her. Nobody needed to look. Such comments weren't meant to be confronted. They were said, believing the other person wouldn't respond. And they believed Marcia would, as always, quietly endure, nod, and move on like nothing happened. Gregory set the glass down without looking up, slowly pulling the napkin from his lap. He dropped it on the floor, deliberately, yet almost casually. Marcia stood half a step away. Before she could react, he spoke clearly, deliberately. "Pick it up. I don't serve myself." The words dropped amidst distant, clinking silverware. Marcia looked down. The white cloth lay folded near her shoe, pristine. She bent over, her hand touched the floor. 1 second, 2 seconds. The entire room seemed to still. No one said a word. No one intervened. Not one glance of support. Not a single objection. Just an image of a black woman, bending over, picking up pride that someone else intentionally discarded. If you were there, what would you do? Pick it up like her? Or walk out of the luxurious party? Leave your thoughts below. Marcia bent down, reaching for the white napkin on the floor. Her fingertips shook slightly, not from strain, but from what had been thrown down alongside that cloth. Time slowed down, each movement heavier than usual. The overhead light cast a long shadow behind her. In the corner, the manager stood silent, hands folded in front, seeing everything. Yet he did nothing, said nothing. Marcia picked up the napkin, folded it, placed it back on the table as if nothing had happened. She stood slowly, looking at no one. Outside, knives, forks, and glasses still clinked together in a distant rhythm of another world. Inside her, something had just cracked. Not the first time, but this time. Deeper. Some wounds don't need words. Just silence at the wrong moment. At a nearby table, an older man laid down his fork. He raised his head, watching table 7. His eyes had not left Marcia since the napkin fell. His skin was dark, his hair closely cropped and gray, his shirt collar slightly wrinkled. Quietly, he took his phone from his jacket pocket. Not hurriedly. Not surprised. He had seen this far too often in his lifetime. His finger pressed record. The screen captured Marcia neatly folding the napkin, returning it into Gregory's hand. No words spoken, no gestures seeking attention. Just a simple act, routine, as if a duty. But this time, someone saw clearly. The man's name was Albert. He had lived through times when the camera never favored people like him. He understood. Some things, if not recorded, would forever be treated as if they never happened. Gregory twisted the wine glass in his hand. One beat, then tilted it sharply. Red liquid spilled onto the white tablecloth, spreading in a wide stain. Every movement around paused briefly, as if someone had dropped metal onto the floor. He didn't look up, just pointed at the mess, voice icy. "Clean it. Isn't that your job?" Marcia stood beside the table, hand gripping the serving towel, didn't move, didn't nod, didn't refuse either. Gregory leaned back in his chair, eyes challenging, almost enjoying. Several eyes from other tables began turning their way. Some frowned. Some shrank back. No one intervened. The white napkin on the table was now stained red, a deliberate mark, a reminder. No matter how skilled she was, to him, she was still just someone he could command. Marcia leaned forward, towel in hand, slowly cleaning the red wine stain on the table. Each movement deliberate, precise, not trembling, not rushing. Her eyes reddened slightly, not from wine, not entirely from humiliation either, but because something deeper was awakening. Not anger, something more profound. I endured, but my child shouldn't have to. That promise echoed in her mind, from a time she used to hold her child asleep on a nighttime bus seat. Marcia folded the cloth again, moved to another corner of the table. Each wipe swallowed unnamed emotions. Across the room, Albert continued filming. Several guests watched, their eyes no longer indifferent. Marcia didn't know what was about to happen. She only knew she couldn't keep living as if everything was normal. "Mom, I hate my school," Jasmine's voice echoed back, as clear as if she'd said it this very morning. Marcia remembered her daughter sitting on the bed, hugging her pillow, eyes avoiding direct contact. "They don't talk to me. They don't invite me to play. Even the teacher acts like she doesn't see me." Marcia sat beside her daughter, gently rubbing her back, and whispered carefully, word by word, "We can't change them, but I can show you. I won't bow my head." At the time, Jasmine didn't fully understand, but Marcia did, and she understood perfectly. Now, beneath the golden lights of Monarch, in front of the lavish table and cold gazes, she heard her own words once again, not for herself, but for a child growing up in an old world who needs adults willing to stand tall. Gregory looked straight at Marcia. His playful tone vanished, his feigned politeness gone. The alcohol had loosened what he always thought but never fully voiced. "You think you belonged here?" He raised his eyebrows, voice rising slightly, slowly, as if giving a lesson. "Don't be naive. In this place, there are only two kinds of people, guests and servers. Don't dream of confusing them." Several heads at nearby tables turned. Becky stood by the counter, gripping her tray tightly, eyes wide open. Marcia said nothing, but she held her gaze. Didn't look away, didn't bow down. Her heart beat faster, not from fear, but from something awakening inside. A boundary had just been pushed to its edge. A question twisted into insult. Her silence was no longer resignation. It was a step back, before rising up. Marcia stood up straight. Didn't lower her head, didn't rush. Her eyes no longer evaded. Her voice came clearly. Not loud, yet echoed sharply through the room. "You can buy the most expensive dinner, but you can't buy kindness." The words landed like a punch into the frozen air. No one laughed. No one gasped. Only silence. Gregory leaned back, his eyes halted, as though unable to believe he'd been challenged. Here, where he believed he was untouchable. Becky turned her face away. The manager took a step forward, then stopped. Albert continued filming. And now, some guests pulled out their phones as well. A short, clear, non-defensive sentence had just flipped the entire table's balance. If you were Marcia, would you dare stand in such a place of power and speak up like that? Leave your answer below. Does this phrase give you chills? Gregory froze, his wine glass suspended mid-air. He stared at Marcia for a few seconds, his look no longer contemptuous but confused and unsettled. No one spoke. No one laughed. Only the faint sound of a knife touching a plate from a distant table. Gregory placed his glass down, stood up without another word. He put on his coat, walking out amidst dozens of silent gazes. Marcia didn't look back. She took a deep breath. Her eyes stared straight ahead. Her hand rested gently on the napkin, as if she'd just completed a simple task. At the next table, Albert gently tapped his phone screen. The video was posted. Unedited, without comments, just a record of the truth. Nobody knew what would happen next. But clearly, what had just happened no longer stayed within Monarch's four walls. The phone screen lit up with bright red numbers, 12 million views, 1.2 million shares. The short video title read, "Black Woman Teaches Billionaire a Lesson About Kindness." On the old sofa, Jasmine hugged a pillow, eyes glued to the screen. The video reached her mother's line. "You can buy the most expensive dinner, but you can't buy kindness." The girl didn't blink, didn't laugh, didn't ask questions. She just looked up at her mother, who was organizing things in the kitchen with a look entirely different from any other day, something deeper than admiration. almost trust. Marcia turned around, noticing her daughter watching her. "What are you watching?" Jasmine gently shook her head. "Nothing. Just, Mom, you're really cool." A small sentence, but to Marcia it was the greatest reward. Not the millions of views, but a daughter's eyes filled with pride. The press conference room was packed. Camera flashes continually flickered. Clarice, the owner of Monarch, approached the wooden podium, composed and calm, speaking firmly without notes. She looked straight into the cameras. "We don't bow to money." A pause. Then she continued. "We bow to truth, dignity, and humanity. We protect people, be they servers or guests." The room buzzed with whispers. A female reporter raised her hand. "Will Monarch change its hiring process?" Clarice nodded. "Not just the process, but also the way we look at ourselves. Real change starts within." At the back, Marcia sat quietly, without makeup, without fancy dresses, but her eyes shone, as though for the first time the world heard her silent voice. The door to Monarch opened, and Bill Gates walked in, tall and warm-eyed. He walked straight to Marcia standing by the bar. "Marcia Thompson?" His voice gentle, yet authoritative. "I heard your story. Project Dignity needs someone like you." Marcia was surprised, a spark of hope in her eyes. Bill continued, "We want to stand with you, to fight for the rights of workers like you and millions of others." The space became quiet, as if a new door had opened. Marcia looked directly into Bill Gates's eyes, sensing the significant responsibility awaiting her. An opportunity not just to change her life, but to change society. Marcia's story was now more than personal. It became the symbol of a movement, a voice that couldn't be silenced. Standing before the microphone, stage lights beaming, Marcia heard the applause. She breathed deeply, eyes meeting hundreds watching her. "I once thought kindness was weakness," she began softly but firmly, "but it turned out to be the only thing that kept me standing through countless trials." Silence filled the room, each word touching hearts. Kindness isn't weakness. It's quiet strength, a resilience that isn't easily broken. As she concluded, Marcia's eyes sparkled with hope and determination. "We're not alone. Together, we can change the world." The applause rose once more, a promise for the future. Jasmine stepped onto the stage, her small hand tightly grasping her mother's. She didn't speak, just stood quietly beside Marcia. The camera tilted upward, golden light illuminating mother and daughter, a living portrait of resilience and hope. Two silhouettes standing firmly amid vast space, lights, and admiring eyes. Jasmine looked at her mother, eyes shining, a future unfolding. Marcia gently hugged her daughter, eyes filled with love and belief, no words necessary. The image spoke for countless untold stories. A symbolic moment, strength of family, resilience, and faith in tomorrow. The audience was silent, absorbing the profound, wordless message. If you've ever seen yourself in this story, stand up. Not to be angry, but to never again bow your head. Not merely a call, but a promise. A promise of kindness, courage, and dignity money can't buy. Every time we're silent, injustice grows. Every time we speak up, new hope ignites. If Marcia's story touched you, share it so it never falls silent. Let many know, even if you feel small, you can still change the world. Don't forget to subscribe to see more inspiring stories. Together, we can make a difference.